And we're back at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists to talk about one more topic. Representative Jim Dines introduced legislation this year that would ask voters to decide whether the state should have an independent ethics commission. Now, Vicki, your organization, Common Cause New Mexico, has supported the creation of an independent ethics commission in the past. In fact, this bill has come up before from Mr. Dines as well. Something feels a little different in the air, however, this year. What's your sense of it? Something feels like it's getting a little traction to me.
The issue is definitely getting a lot more traction this year. And until I go back and look at old news clippings from the 70s in my archives that have the same arguments for, the same arguments against, I am not even exaggerating.
Interesting.
I have Albuquerque Journal, letters to the editor, editorial stories, and Representative Dines has, you know, as I was telling Janice earlier, I wish I had a sponsor like him on everything. He cares about the issue. He has listened to people. He makes amendments after each committee. He does everything he can to tighten it up. And that's our number one support is with that bill.
Exactly right. Mary, let's get to some of the legalities here. Interesting, as I'm reading it and as we're all reading it, $500,000 to run this thing. We've got a staff of 7 or 8 kind of teed up for this. But my big question is about subpoena power and then also the role of the AG's office in this mix. Something seems kind of odd here. Explain how you understand it would work with this.
I'm thinking it's going to be kind of a secret. To me, it sounds like it's going to be more of a secret kind of a process, much like when I was reading it, this sounds more like our judicial review panels, et cetera. So that'll be kind of keeping things a bit secret, and then there'll be a report at the end. Versus, right?
No,
not quite. No, that was okay. Well then, okay.
Interesting.
That was, that was my understanding that it was going to be with a report at the end, and Damon Ely's wanting something completely different. So.
Well, no, I think that's been actually the opposite is what has been the criticism of the constitutional amendment is that it does make everything public and there is a public hearing. And so with Representative Dines' constitutional amendment, what would happen is there would be a complaint made, and then of course the person who was being complained about has a chance to respond. And then both of them are put up online for the whole world to see when that response comes in or when the response is due. So the respondent can't get away with not having the complaint ever made public by not coming forward.
And that it cannot be a confidential complaint. It's got
that has to be signed.
Is that not problematic though and how we get to a situation solved here? I mean, 5 out of 7 of the commissioners have to agree you need to move forward. But they are appointed by the governor and some other folks in the legislature. What happens if one of these people are under the watch of the legislature or the governor's office? Or?
I think that's going to be your problem. Which I think if the AG can come in, at least the AG, it is in the executive branch, but at least the AG, that's what their role is to make sure that the law is applied evenly, enforced, et cetera. So I think at least with that part, I think that part will be a good thing.
Senator, what do you think about any potential conflicts here with other law enforcement and other agencies here?
Well,
are they doing the work that others?
Well, one of the problems that we have right now is we have, too many cooks in the soup. We have the AG, we have the Secretary of State, we have the Legislative Committee, we have the Judicial Standards Committee, and often there's a lot of confusion, a lot of shopping around to see where you could get off the easiest, and it's confusing for the public, and because it looks like everything is slipping between the cracks once again, and the public trust is eroded. Remember, this is like year after year, the public opinion stuff comes back saying 8 out of 9 or 9 out of 10 people want a strong independent ethics committee. This year, I think there was a poll that said business leaders, New Mexico business leaders, who feel that New Mexico is on the wrong track now. Want this as a way to bolster our reputation to attract new business.
Janice, do you see any conflicts here between agencies and goals, conflict of goals? Let me give you an example. what do we do about, I'm sure the representative has thought about this, but crazy accusations, false accusations that you have to just answer, as Vicki pointed out. You don't have the ability to stand back and say, this is junk. I'm not going to respond to this. You have to respond at this point now.
Yeah.
Is that problematic? In
You
some-
know, I think that is one of the genius pieces about Jim Dines' bill.
Okay.
Is that that the commission can weigh in very early that it is not a credible
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
complaint, not
Okay.
credible, and they will say that. Although, it is my understanding, the complaint will still be public, and the respondent can still reply, but they would make an early decision that it's not credible.
Okay.
Do I have that?
Well,
right?
you do, and that has definitely been a sticking point.
Yeah.
And also around the makeup of the committee. Okay, so again, for 40 years, the biggest issues around this are the frivolous complaints that are going to ruin my reputation on one side, and then the public saying, well, I don't want elected officials getting to choose who's on this ethics commission.
That's
right.
Then you come back to New Mexico and our legislature and our lack of ballot initiative unless we go through the legislature. So I'm telling people, first of all, we will never get an ethics commission that the legislature and governor and Supreme Court and maybe the Bar Association and other
Right.
people don't have a say-so.
Gotcha.
So if that's our goal, we will never have one. It will never make it through the legislature. People don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. And then on the opposite side, for the legislators who are scared to death of these frivolous complaints, and my blood boils every time I hear that, quite frankly,
Okay.
because it's already happening. People can already do that.
Yeah.
If
I
anyone
see.
recalls, just a few months ago, the parties filed complaints against each other and put out a press release that day.
Right.
So the crazy complaints can already,
Right.
this way you at least get your response up saying, that doesn't make any sense. And I know they get frivolous complaints. I'm sure they do. But other states, again, we're one of 8 states without an ethics commission, don't have this huge flood.
That's right.
I think Colorado got maybe 30 in the last election a year. So I think that, again, those are two things on both sides that we have heard for literally 40 years.
Does anyone worry, however, I appreciate that point, Vicki Harrison, because does anyone worry that this commission could have a hammer waiting to drop, that everything just looks like a nail, because they know the public is waiting for action on these things. And the first time something comes around, kabam, there's like do you know what I'm saying? There's overreach sometimes, Mary, that can happen in these things. Is that a possibility here?
Well, I think it's going to be
The
a
public's
possibility
anxious
in
for
anything.
something, you know?
I do. I think it'll be a possibility.
Yeah.
With anything, but I guess you just have to trust the people that are on the commission. You're just going to have to
Right.
trust it. But I think anything is going to be.
Well, I'm
That's a good
thinking
point,
even
yeah.
with the Phil Griego case,
Right.
with a commission like that, I don't think they would have just gone kabam, because in any complaint, there are a lot of questions.
That's right.
Sure.
And
Nothing's
that
ever
is the good
clean.
thing. But I do want to bring up one thing that I'm a little disappointed with, is the commission covers all the elected folks, including the executive, but it does not cover appointees, does it? It does not.
I'm not sure if we've added that. There's been so many amendments made, and if you want it to, I'm sure Representative Duns would be happy to add that in the next
I would-
committee.
I know where
Cover
he is at the-
appointees. Why wouldn't it cover
I
appointees?
think it does.
I don't think it does. I
Interesting.
think there was a section in there, and I'll go back and check,
Yeah.
but I think it said elected.
Yeah.
Oh, well-
Senator, would this be the final thing for the public? What I'm getting at, the commission, everyone can then go, we're covered. We got our backs covered here. Is this the thing we really want to have here, or is there something beyond an ethics commission that we need to have in order for the public to feel really good about it?
Well, we don't live in a perfect world.
True.
We don't live in a perfect world, and nothing is going to completely address the public's lack of faith in the legislature. Remember, legislators at best have like a 30% approval rating.
Right.
This will bump it up more, but it's not going to be 100%. It'll never be that. But, for me, one of the things, just as a former legislator, that could help was if an ethics commission was sort of helping educate elected officials and public employees in a very gray area. As a citizen legislature, in a very gray area, conflict of interest is a confusing kind of thing. And if we could get a body that actually takes more time to educate employees and elected officials, I think we would have fewer cases pop up on the front page of the newspaper and once again destroy everybody's faith in government.
As former elected folk, do things like this make a difference in behavior? I mean, is it a stopper, Janice Arnold-Jones? Do you know what I mean?
Well, you would hope so. So let me defend the electeds.
Okay.
The people that I served with in the legislature, there were 112 of them, and I assure you 95% of them are doing the very best they can possibly
absolutely.
do. But there are people who, for many different reasons, don't exactly live by the same values that I do.
And people make mistakes,
and they do
too.
make mistakes.
Yeah.
But that number who do this with intent, very small, but they give the rest of us a horrible name, and it will help.
Vicki, do I also understand that part of this is dealing with the idea of how one raises money and reports money during the campaign? Isn't that the Secretary of State's office's job to do that kind
Only
of stuff?
10%.
Only 10%? Okay.
Well, and the
okay.
Secretary of State's office will still be running the elections and the reporting and all this, but when there comes in complaints, and that's been one of the gray areas that we've been dealing with, is that currently our statutes may, shall, back and forth between the Secretary of State and AG, which again are never funded to do this and to do their job.
Good point.
And I think that there's plenty of work to go around. And I think that that's, really one of the big things that, this is certainly not the end. Democracy is not something that you just do and then sit back.
That's right.
Yeah.
My founder, John Gardner, and Dee Dee had a fantastic quote that she sent me this year. And, he basically said that, this is something that's constantly changing, whether for good or bad. And if you want to work in democracy and you want to move it forward, you have to work with, I would even say 98 to 99% of the elected officials who are even the ones who voted against me and my bills for 20-something years, they are doing their best. And as Dee Dee says, we're talking about a citizens legislature with inherent built-in conflicts of interest.
That's right.
These are people who have a regular job and their wives and husbands have regular jobs.
That's right.
And so if we had a body to go to put out advisory opinions and to a place to go to and say, campaigns used to cost 10 grand. Now they cost 4 or 5 times that. So you've got a regular person who suddenly is now having to deal with $500,000, which is very different than $20,000.
More money, more problems, as they say. That's right. Thank you all. What a great night. Good discussions all the way around.
Thank you.
I'm Gene Grant. Thanks for joining us for New Mexico in Focus. We appreciate your time and effort to stay informed and engaged. We'll see you next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and the Nalita E. Walker Fund for KNME-TV, the KNME-TV Endowment Fund, and viewers like you.